Today we're going to talk about DM stitching, um, and uh, and how that works in the protocol. So I'm going to do a little summary kind of recap here. Is that you have, an iPad and an iPhone, and you're logged into the same app. You have two different installations. So this is like installation A, and this is installation, oops, B. It doesn't have to be the same app, just the same address, the same inbox ID. Um, but we'll just for the simplicity, we'll say you have an iPad and an iPhone with the same app. So you have installation A and installation B. So let's say you're logged in on installation A and you have a DM, and this DM is with, user user A. So you have a DM with this user A, and you want this to be a unique DM, but under the hood, everything is a group. So when you log in on installation B, there's a period of time, like we talked about with history syncing, where your inbox may look empty because it's a new installation. And if you don't wait for history sync to finish, and you're like, oh, I need to talk to user A immediately, you could go up here and call create DM. It won't be able to find a DM because you have an empty inbox. There's nothing in your local database. It'll say, is there a DM already? So if you know the way that create DM, so maybe I should do a summary here. If you know the way that create DM works, in this scenario, where you already have a database full of stuff, when you call create DM, it looks into your local database and it says, hey, do I already have a DM with this user? If so, let's just use that DM. If not, let's create a DM with this user. So that's how it works if you have something in your local database. But the scenario that we're talking about here is that you don't have anything in your local database. This is empty. So it's like, oh no, I don't have a DM with the user. So I'm going to create a new one with user A. So now you have a DM with user A here. Now your history sync finishes, and now you have two DMs with user A. Well, that's really inconvenient because you don't want to have two DMs with user A. You only want to have one. And so what we do underneath the hood here is what we call DM stitching. So let's say you get into a scenario where you have two DMs with user A. Let's say, hopefully this is an edge case because you wanted to wait for your conversation history, or you have a backup or something else, and this loads quickly and your database has all these records, and it won't get into a state where you accidentally create two DMs. But let's say that you do get into it. It is physically possible to get into a state where you have two DMs with user A. What we do underneath the hood is we stitch these together to look like one DM. So if we discover that you have two DMs, we take the one that is latest. So that will mean that these have two different IDs. So these are two different conversations, so they have two different IDs. So when you call conversation list, it will stitch these DMs together and it'll just return your latest one. So let's say this is ID B and this is ID B and this is ID A, because this was the one that came in later, but was this one. When you call conversation list, it'll take just the latest. And so you'll have, like, in your conversation list, it'll just be ID B, and you won't have the duplicate ID A in here. So you'll see just one DM with this person throughout the app. You won't see two, even if there are two under the hood. And so if it discovers that there's a duplicate, it tries to get everybody onto the latest one. So this one was ID A, but the next time you call sync, it'll see that there was another one created, and now this will be ID B. And so everybody will be sending messages onto the latest version of this DM. So like over time, if you have like DMB and DMC, over time, like the older ones should just become like further and further away, and just this one should become kind of the the golden standard DM. So we have these still exist, but they should become more and more irrelevant the longer time goes on, because this is like the standard one where everyone should be sending messages to going forward. Um, so yeah, so there's like a little bit of periods of time where like I could have an app that's sending messages to DMA, and I could have, the person I'm talking to could be sending it on DMB, and then there could be another one sending on DMC. But from a user perspective, when you call conversation list, there should only be one. And when you call, messages on IDB, they get stitched together. So you'll see just a list of messages, and it won't matter, this message could be sent to DMB and this one could be sent to DMA, and they just kind of stitch together and it makes a view, and you shouldn't know which one they were actually sent to. So the place where this gets weird is when you think about push notifications. And so we talked about push notifications last week or previous week here, and that's where this gets a little bit tricky. So you want to get push notifications for this conversation from all of the potential DMs. But if you call conversation list and then you get a list of topics and you say, okay, let's subscribe to all these topics, subscribe, I can't spell, to all these topics, you're only going to be subscribing to this one because it filters out all of the duplicates. So if somebody is still pointing to DMA and sending messages, those DMs won't show up in your push notifications. And so to get around this, we have a method on side of conversations called all topics. And what all topics does is it calls list conversations, which takes in the back end takes a Boolean called include duplicates. And it just says include duplicates is usually defaults to true. And we don't actually let you to set this, but in all topics, we say include duplicates false. Include duplicates true is what we say, not false. And that'll give you a list of all the topics, and that way that you can actually subscribe to every single one of these. So in the edge case, in the off chance that somebody is still pointing to a different DM and sending messages to this DM, that you will still get the push notifications for it because you're subscribed to all of the topics, not just the visible topics, which list conversations will just give you the visible topics. Okay. Did I miss anything? Is Coda here?
I'm here. It sounds pretty good so far.
Okay. Well, so far, what am I missing? I was going to end it here.
Oh, no, I was just going to, you corrected yourself. So it's good. You're good.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have just a quick comment. So it sounds like for notifications, we subscribe to all topics. So it's possible you could get a notification or a DM that, is of the previous IDB or like the not the most recent one. So if you were to say click on that notification, I'm wondering if maybe that's like a weird app flow that maybe we should call out where they might try and navigate to a conversation ID that doesn't get returned from the list function or something like that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, Coda. So if I call find conversation or like find group and I give it an ID for a DM, that's an old one, will it point me to the new one, or will it just return the old one?
That's correct. It'll stitch it together and just return you the newer of the two DMs that are overlapping.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that sounds like it would resolve that issue. Cool.
Yeah, and if I were doing something with a DM, I probably would call like find DM by inbox ID. And if you find it by the inbox ID, that will always give you the correct one, for certain. So like for a push notification and you're trying to get to where you're supposed to go. But it sounds like this should also work, or find conversation. Because we handle that under the hood.